I'm Judy Murray. Behind every champion is a driving force.
Queen Victoria at her best.
Wanting to prove people wrong was something that was a very powerful driving force in me.
We all got prepared for how to perform, but no one prepared us for what will happen after.
The best of British.
If you can see it, you can believe it, and you can believe that that could be you.
We knew that we was a part of something bigger.
More glory for Sarah's story.
If you don't stop doing this, you may go deaf.
It was everybody else that almost had to suffer because of what I did.
Stunning stuff from Anderson.
Becky, I think you need a sports psychologist. And I was like, why? What's wrong with me?
I was a little bit scared when he first told us. I knew that there was a massive responsibility.
The undisputed lightweight champion of the world.
It's going to be her historic second goal. Kelly Holmes for Great Britain.
I didn't know about a breakdown, becoming a self-harmer, to being depressed. Had no idea what that meant.
If you tell me I can't do something, I will go out of my way to prove you wrong.
Here comes Kelly Holmes. Kelly Holmes for Great Britain.
Really, she was in a class of her own.
She had the fitness, but she also had the tactics and, you know, the brain to get it right on the day.
Kelly Holmes, not only the crowd favourite, but the race favourite.
What a performance.
She was a natural. Kelly's mental strength has come through a lot to get to where she finally got to.
The crowd love this woman here. They'll be on their feet very soon for Kelly Holmes.
It's not just about winning 2 races. In Kelly's case, it was winning something that she'd worked half her life to achieve.
Her performance in Athens was one of the things that made people actually think, wow, you know, maybe they are serious, maybe they do have some athletes.
There's nothing she can't do. If she says she's going to do this, she'll do it.
She is the double Olympic champion. We've never had one like you before.
Dame Kelly Holmes, double gold Olympic medalist, honorary colonel, global inspirational speaker. You have the most fascinating story. Can't wait to hear it. Tell me where it all began.
1970, dare I say it, I was born to my mother, who was 17, British white. Can you imagine back in the 70s coming to Kent, whiter than white county, being a mixed-race child? And she was actually told by my granddad, her dad, that she wouldn't be able to look after me and needed to put me into a children's home until she could look after herself. And so I went to a children's home in Tunbridge Wells, actually, for the first sort of 5 years of my life, in and out. As you get older, those sort of parts of your life become part of your journey and your story as well. The one thing, and probably the only thing me and my mum had in common, was her tenacity and strength of character, because when the adoption services came to pick me up, she refused to sign the paperwork and ripped it up and said no. And so I ended up then coming back home with my mum, and then she met my dad, Mick, and I grew up with them.
So how old would you be when your mum met Mick?
So I probably would have been 3 or 4. My mum knew Mick from being in Hildenborough and stuff anyway, from years ago. So I know we lived in a flat for a little period of time in Tunbridge until we moved to Riding Park. I came back sort of, my mum could look after me when they got together more, really, and they got married when I was about 7.
In the estate we lived at when she was a kid, she went round to the old people, and when there was about 3 foot of snow, she dug a pathway all the way round for them out to the road. And they all came out and said thank you and gave her, you know, sweets, and it's just her mentality. She's just that sort of person.
And then your brothers came along.
Yes.
And at what point did you realise that you were a little bit different from your brothers?
So I was at school, Hildenborough Primary School, and you know what children are like, they just sort of come out with something. It was when my brother Kevin was born, who's 8 years younger than me. I remember a child saying, "Where's your mum and dad white and you're brown. And I was like, oh, am I? I had no concept of colour at all at that stage.
Never occurred to you?
Never, ever occurred to me that was different to anybody until they pointed it out. And I remember, I can actually visualise it going across to my house, and we were waiting to cross the road, and I'm holding my mum's hand, and I said, why am I different to everybody else? And she kind of just says, oh, because you had a different dad. But I didn't really get it at that time, because Mick was my dad to me. So, yeah, I sort of grew up a little bit thinking, like, who am I then? And I remember the only time that, again, I felt slightly different, but I didn't take it personally, was when Brown Girl in the Ring came out and they're saying, tra-la-la-la-la, you know, she looks like a sugar in the plum, plum, plum. And I was thinking, yeah, of course, I was the brown girl in the ring. And I'm dancing around like, tra-la-la-la-la. And I thought, oh, I'm special. And I always had that attitude that being different meant good things, not negative. And I suppose I feel quite lucky that I had that perception that actually standing out is better than, you know, blending in.
At what point did the running come in? Was that at school?
Yeah, so that was at secondary school. I couldn't read very well, I didn't write very well, and so going to secondary school, I really felt that I was no one. You know, I was outside the classroom a lot because I'd just be the chatty kid that kind of got said chucked out, you know, when the French teacher's talking to you in French and you're just saying, I have no idea what you're talking about, you know, and they're still talking in French. I was out. And it was my PE teacher, Debbie Page, that kind of said to me, you know, you've got a talent, but you've got to, one, believe it and concentrate on what you're doing, you know, and you're good at running. I was beating girls that were 2 years older than me.
She could do anything, really, from 100 up to 800. She found the 800 very easy, whereas a lot of girls were struggling after the first lap. It seemed to Kelly that she could go on.
I have to say that that influence from my PE teacher really changed me, even back then. She really did make me feel good.
I think she could be a little trouble in other lessons when she got bored and things like that, but in PE, she was probably the perfect student because she enjoyed doing it.
I went around running. She wanted me to do this cross-country race, which I really did not want to do. You know, when you've got an afro hair, and it was back in the day of the see-through Airtex white shirts, you know, and the skirts and the apple catcher knickers and the white high-knee socks and white plimsolls. That's not cross-country kit.
She doesn't like wet. She doesn't like it cold. So cross-country is the furthest from what she wants to do.
I ended up doing this cross-country, coming second to a girl that looked fabulous. And she said to me, look, you can be good. And she encouraged my mum to take me down to the local athletics club in Tonbridge. And I could say that the rest was history. But it was her influence on me that just made me feel good and almost gave me an identity.
As Kelly progressed through the school, she still continued to represent the school. And it was probably coming up to the year 9 that I seemed to notice that after having a couple of months training with Tonbridge Athletics, and I think being given the confidence that she was a good runner, then I think I sensed then that she had come together and thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go higher than this.
I always say that there's talent's everywhere, but opportunity isn't. And you need talent to meet opportunity, and that opportunity so often comes in the form of a teacher. And when you were there, you met someone who became another major driving force in your life, and that was Dave.
Yes, Dave Arnold. I turned up at the track and he had absolute white hair, like really white hair. And I turned up, my mum dropped me off and says, you better stick at this one, because I'd literally lasted about a day and everything else. I remember the first thing Dave said to me, he said, right, I want you to go and run with these older kids. And he said, I want you to talk all the way through, because I heard that you talk a lot, so at school.
We all know that.
We know that. I just thought, what are you talking about? And I went off and I'm chat. And I got back and I said, why did you tell us to talk the whole way round? He says, one day, when you need all of your breathing and you need to be in control, you'll know why I got you to do this. And that was my first lesson around being able to control my breathing, to be able to utilise it well in performance. And I never forget that moment.
He spotted the talent that had been put in front of him.
Yeah.
So how did he get you towards the distances in running that you ultimately chose? Or was he the person that helped you to see that's where you maximise your talents?
I got entered into the English Schools Championship. I was 13, so it was after that cross-country season, and I got put into the 1500 metres. I'd already become Kent champion, Kent Schools champion, a Southern Counties champion, and I won my first English Schools in Plymouth, 1500 metres. The year after, it was the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, and it was in summer holidays. I remember watching those games, and Sebastian Coe won the 1500 metres. And because I'd already started in 1500, it really was that catalyst for creating a dream to be Olympic champion.
So he was a role model because he excelled in the distance that you were starting to excel in.
That's right, and at that stage, it wasn't necessarily a female influence, it was a person that proved that you can do something. And so my PE teacher kept me obviously going during the school years, and I entered everything that I could enter.
As it got on, and it got further and further afield, I said, God, how am I going to afford this? In the end, I didn't have two ages to rub together, and she had to go up to Scotland or something, you know. So, but it all paid off in the end, so that's all right, isn't it?
My parents came to lots of the lower class events. My mum and my nan and granddad and my dad would always say, oh, it's hell, because, you know, cross country is always wet, cold wind, and I'd come back like a shivering wreck.
You didn't like that, though,
I
did
hated
you?
it. I hated mud, cold, I still do, wet, rain, you know, everything about it. And they said, yeah, but we were waiting for you to finish, and we hated it as well.
It's all right for you, you were running, we were just standing there getting wet.
Exactly, and you know what that's like, parents.
Yeah.
Influence behind young people. They're the taxi driver, they're the kind of influencer, they make your dinner, you know, they're the everything when you're a young person.
She always come in crying her eyes out because she was so cold. And we had to take flasks of drinking chocolate, blankets, and I wouldn't want to do it, but no, she'd done all right.
When I was 17, I won my last English Schools Championships, and I also won the Mini Youth Olympic Games in Holland. I won gold, and I stood on a rostrum with the national anthem playing, the British flag flying, and a medal around my neck. And I have this recollection of almost thinking to myself, I wonder if this ever come true when I'm old enough. It was what I held on to. You know, I really just wanted to be an Olympian, but I wanted to be Olympic champion.
Where did the army come in?
The Army Careers Office came in, they showed 3 videos, the Army, Navy and Air Force. And then they showed this video of soldiers going underneath the scramble net and over the 12-foot wall and swinging on the ropes. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I love it. You know, I was like, yes.
Challenge, competition.
Everything about it. And from that day, again, I wanted to be in the Army. And I went back home and I said to Mum, I'm going to be in the Army. And I made her take me on my 15th, 16th, 17th birthday to the Careers Office because I was desperate to get in, even though I had the Olympic dream, and they kept turning me away because I wasn't old enough.
I think it was the right decision. If you enjoy sport and you're active, which Kelly was, and also if you compete to quite a high level, I think the services help you out a great deal.
You know, growing up with feeling that you didn't academically have anything to give, I didn't know what I could do as a young person other than run. So the Army sort of gave me a bit of inner belief that actually I could have a career, I could meet new people, I could expand my mindset on who I was. And it was a massive challenge to go in and make that decision, but I loved it. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is that I was actually also given this scholarship to go to Minnesota to be an athlete. but it happened to be at the same time of the year that I wanted to go in the army. And
so you had to make a choice?
Yeah, I had to make a big choice. My dream was to be a physical training instructor. You know, I really wanted to do that, but I joined as a heavy goods vehicle driver because it's the only way in at the time. I was like, I'll take it. So I joined what was called the Women's Royal Army Corps. So that's what it was back then. So our training depot was in Guildford, which was governed by women, which had a rank structure, a promotion structure, all by women, learning about discipline, respect, learning how to iron. I've never forgot how to iron, I have to say. And just shaping you and moulding you into what they expected a soldier to be. I went for my first selection as a PTI and I failed. They were telling me I just wasn't good enough for anything but running. It's hard, isn't it, when someone just tells you you're not good. In sport, it's quite black and white.
Yeah.
You know if you're good or not.
Yeah.
I was devastated at the time, and I just thought to myself, I'm going to prove to you I'm good enough. And I felt like you're just putting me down. I just thought, no, I'm going to show you I can do it. So I put myself in every course you can imagine, and I came back and I came top in my selection for the next one. And that was one of the bits in my head about sometimes in life you have to make those moves to become and show, unfortunately, show you're good. I think as women sometimes we have to do a little bit more to prove.
Did you ever encounter any racism within the army?
If I looked back around my career and some incidences that you had, I could question, did they just not like me? Was it because I was a woman? Was it because I'm mixed race? When I went in to become a PTI, I actually got chucked off the course and I was the only person on that selection. I was the only mixed race person as well. And then it was an influence of another officer, Colonel McCord, that brought me in because she knew I was really good as a PTI. Institutionally, like anything, you're always going to get problems. You're going to get sexism, you're going to get racism, you're going to get homophobia, you're going to get so many things because of an institution. And then I was asked to compete for the Army Championship, so I just went ahead as a soldier and just ran, and because I could run, I was winning like the 200, the 400, the 800, the 1500, but I had no inkling to get back into athletics as a sport. I just did it because I loved it. And I suppose the direction that it took me, the Army, was just that platform to be good at something again, you know, to showcase that was my forte, sport.
Didn't you become the Army Judo champion as well?
Yes, I became the Army Judo champion. I competed for volleyball in the Army, and I became Army athletics champion at like 4, 8, 15, 3,000, and then into services champion. And so the influence of athletics was still there. The first influence actually back was I was posted in York. I'd now become a physical training instructor. I was influenced by, there was a guy, I was running in a cross-country race, and I ended up winning this inter-services competition, going back up to York, where I was at the time, and this guy kept phoning up, saying, "Oh, Kelly, I remember you when you were a junior athlete, you've got to come back." But this guy had an influence because he said, "You were a great runner when you were a junior, don't lose it," and it almost reignited my dream. At the same time, it was 1992, Olympic Games in Barcelona, and again, I was inspired by those games. So then I got moved down to Beaconsfield, a school, Army School of Languages, and there was a woman there who was a sergeant, Jackie Langhorne. She said, you know, use your attribute as a sports person to, as a runner, to put yourself above other people, and to, you don't have to shout about it, but bring that out as your skill set as being a PTI. And there was a situation I had at this Army School of Languages where it was for potential officers to come, and I had this group of 30 boys come from university who wanted to be officers but had to come through us first to go. So I just sent them out onto this run. I said, anyone that I beat has to come in at 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. at night, and if you beat me, you don't have to do PT for 2 weeks. Of course, these guys were like loving it, thinking, yeah, this little 5'3" woman, you know, kind of just, yeah, easy. No, I just had this challenge, and to cut a long story short, I ended up winning. Coming back, it was the same year as Linford Christie had won the 100 metres for Great Britain, you know, the high knees. Sally Gunnerwood won Olympic champion. In my head, I became Linford Christie, the last 100 metres of this, beat them all 30 to the gym. They looked at me like, geez, this is like a blooming beast woman type thing. And it made me realise about some skill sets that we have as women. You don't always have to kind of just keep shouting about it. You can prove, because if you're good enough at something, you don't have to say anything, do you? Just do it.
Actions speak louder.
Exactly. And at that same time, with that influence of the Olympic Games, Jackie had said to me, you know, you could be really good at this. So kind of as a combination of somebody saying you could actually be a really good runner, me knowing I was good, having that belief, and I got entered into a civilian UK championships. I was announced as Corporal Holmes. No one knew who I was. I didn't know who anyone was. I just thought, oh, great, I'll run. I was told to follow these two girls that were going for a World Championship qualifying time, and I won. I got qualified for this World Championships. At the same time, I'm in the army, full-time soldier. It was just a bizarre period of my life, really.
Was it after that that you came back from that and you immediately had to go on duty? So you're in your hut, in your army gear, with your loaded rifle, protecting your barracks, just hours after you'd been running in a World Championships in Stuttgart.
Yeah, there was a big leveller being in the army. You know, 1 minute you're in this team feeling like, oh my gosh, you know, all these brilliant people and wearing a Great Britain vest, and the next minute, literally the same night as landing, I'm stagging on, what they call stagging on.
I can remember once she rung me up. She'd just coming home from, I think it was Malmo, started to come home. She says, where are you going? What's wrong? We're going home, aren't we? No, she says, I've got to be on guard tonight. So I had to turn around and take her off to Beaconsfield. And there she was on guard all night.
I used my leave to go away and compete because I never wanted anyone to think that I went through my career as an army soldier being given like a step forward. I wanted to earn my rank, I wanted to earn my promotion, I wanted to be the best PTI that there could be. And I think that's the mindset that I had when I went into athletics as well.
Take me back to the 1994 European Championships, and you discover that in your race there is a woman who is 42 years old. And what does your mum say?
My mum was 42 at the time. And my mum said, if she beats you, just imagine it's me beating you. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember running this race, and I was so kind of very naive to the world of sport then. I'd won the Commonwealth Games gold, but it was such a shock to me. 2 weeks later, I'm at these European champs. The first girl had gone off, and then there was this girl in front of me, this woman, Podek Pieva. She was in front of me, and all I had ringing in my ears, literally at the end of the race, was, well, I'm going to beat you. And all I could think of was I'd beat my mother, not about anything else. And I came off the track and I ran, and there was this radio going, can I borrow your phone? And I called my mum and said, I beat you! And she was like, laughing. And, you know, it wasn't about winning the medal, it was nothing, it was about beating my mother.
I just love how mums so often know exactly the right thing to say at the right moment.
Yeah, definitely she knew that if she riled me up enough to think she could beat me, I would be on it. I think I was so nervous going to this big championship, and I think that was her way of just making me focus on
relax.
one thing.
Yeah, imagine I'm there with you and you want to beat me. I love it, I love it. Tell me a little bit about Mick and that unbelievable story about your passing out parade.
So Mick has been an incredible influence on my life. He's my dad. It's kind of a difficult family time at the time because my mum had left him, but he was still my dad, you know, and I was living at home in between army. And anyway, so he came up with my brothers and my best friend Kerry to my passing out parade from Guildford. So I'd just been there 6 weeks of training, and you get to learn that the parade square is like God. You know, you do not go on that parade square unless you are on a parade practice, drill practice, or you're passing out. That's it. And I remember someone screaming, oh my God, there's a car going across the parade square.
Sergeant Major said, car park's over there. But I didn't hear him say, bear left.
So we all ran to this window, and I could have died. There was one person, one car, driving across the parade square, slow as anything, with a sergeant major going like behind him, like, ah. It was my dad. I was mortified. I remember like sinking to the ground, like, oh my God. But if anyone's going to do it, it's Mick. It's my dad.
And all I could see were these two wheel marks across the playground. That was funny. She gave me some stick for that.
So who was responsible for your coaching when you were in the army?
Firstly, it was my drive. Then it was Wesley Duncan, my first coach back out of going into civilian sport. He coached me through the World Championships in '93. And then actually, I went back to Dave, my coach from Tonbridge Athletics Club, you know, kind of this coach that had his own life and family and just had a passion for sport.
But who knows you inside out?
Knew me inside out. However, there was a slight dilemma when I came back, because I'd left him as a 17-year-old and I came back to him as a 24-year-old soldier. So we had a bit of kind of that dynamic need to understand each other again, but effectively, I knew I could trust him. He knew me inside out. He knew what level I could get to.
At what point did some of the tough times kick in with all the catalogue of injuries that you've had through your career? When did the first one of those occur?
So I still competed in the Army, and I went to my first Olympic Games in Atlanta, and I had a brilliant session, and then the next day I flew off to Tallahassee, our holding camp, and I felt a pain in my shin. And I said, oh, let's just scan it. You know, no one was worried. And they said, you've got a stress fracture. And I was just like, how have I got a stress fracture? You know what I mean? Yesterday I was perfect, and I've probably obviously done maybe one too many. So they told me I had to go home, and I remember calling my mum and absolutely in floods of tears saying, you know, they told me I've got to go home. So I went back and I said to them, well, what's the options? And they said, well, if you run, you might fall over, break your leg. And I went, OK, well, I'll take that option. And I did. They gave me injections into the bone site. I ran. I got through the heats, the semi-final, the final, and I got picked on the line into fourth, like by a tenth of a second. I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. Actually, what happened was I thought to myself, I can take that as a negative, or actually I could look at it and think, I came fourth at an Olympic Games running with a stress fracture. Like, I can do this, you know. So the next year after, I came out all guns a-blazing, like literally, I was like, I am ready. It was the World Championships in Athens that year, and I came out, I broke the British record that stood for 12 years in the 1,500 metres. It made me 5 seconds faster than anyone else in the world. I was going to those World Champs to win. I ended up getting a niggle in my Achilles tendon a couple of weeks before, went to Germany, got some treatment, flew into Athens. Next day, first race, so the first day of the championships, completely ruptured my calf from one side to the other and tore my Achilles tendon, hobbled down the track. And I remember the doctor there, a foreign doctor, saying, that's your career over. And I was devastated. I thought, no, it can't be. So I just put myself through, like, the physio, the treatment that I had to do, emotionally, it was really tough. But the following year, I came back and won a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur. And in my head, I kept thinking, well, if I can come back from this, I can do anything. Then I got glandular fever in '99, still went to the World Championships, got to a final, but ran out of steam. Then it was the Olympic Games again, and I was going to be 30. You know, I was devastated at being 30, I have to say. I don't do age very well, Judy. I don't take age very well. And I got another tear in my right calf, and again, I was told, you're likely not to get to the Olympic Games. And I was like, I am going to those Olympic Games, and I'm coming back with a medal. So I had to have that strength in my own mind, because there's a lot of people around you that can put you down, and doubts, because it's easier for people to lower your expectation than to put it up as a high, yes, you can sometimes, whereas I wanted, I can.
Did your army training help you with that, do you think?
Yeah, I think that inner strength of character, and as a female, kind of taking no crap, basically, you know, like, I'm going to do it. Yeah, definitely that was an army mentality. I'll do it anyway.
But it wasn't just those injuries that you spoke about there. You had some big internal problems too.
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of gynecological problems that obviously I didn't let known in my athletics career. So I had in total 5 operations from '93 up until about '99, '98, where I had some issues down below. So I was getting these really bad cramps, almost like it was tearing inside my stomach. So after every hard training session, I'd literally crawl to the toilet. I'd be bleeding. It would take about 20, 25 minutes for it to calm down. I'd have to take muscle relaxants. What happened is when you've got a male coach, as I did, that was the only thing that I think Dave felt helpless with. He didn't know how to deal with it. Because we never really talked about hormonal part of being a girl and a female. They're the only things that I think coaches definitely need to understand more about females in sport, because we go through so much more. And I didn't want to tell people all of these because it almost would look like I was weak, and I didn't want my opposition to know, so I just dealt with it.
It's so incredibly important, isn't it, that coaches understand everything that is going on with the female body and the female psyche. And for such a long time, these were just things that you just held on to yourself. But was there nobody that you could speak to about? Was there no women around that you could talk to about that?
No, so I just had the gynecologist, a male, who was trying to help me deal with it and did most of my operations because he knew me from having the first incident when I was in the army, being rushed to hospital grey because I had an ovary that twisted around the fallopian tube, and we thought that was always the crux of the matter. It was actually the beginning of 2006, so I had an Olympic year, and I'd had an operation because they'd noticed I had a big infection, and it was from all the tearing that I had. And basically what it was is that the insides had gone, you know, like you have glue and you separate, and it'd all gone like that. So I had to have an operation, and because I was an athlete, he said, I'm going to have to give you like a cesarean, but of course what we've got to do is move all the muscles apart, because if we cut through your muscles, you're not getting back running. But I couldn't really talk to anyone else about that because I didn't know who to, and there was no female influence at that time as a coach. I used to tell my mum when things were going wrong and be in tears to her, but she couldn't help anything. She couldn't influence anything in sport. During my injury problems, I could talk to my physios, whether they were male or female, about my injuries, but I really couldn't talk to them about how it was affecting me psychologically.
And what were the longer-term impacts on you in terms of your body and your mindset as a result of all of these injuries that you had to deal with?
So in 2003, I was actually getting ready for World Championships in Paris, and I got another niggle in my calf, and I think having that niggle again just deflated everything about me, thinking, not again. Having another injury almost just like crushed me, and I ended up having a massive breakdown. I went into the toilets and I just broke down. I looked in a mirror and I literally hated everything about myself because my body was always letting me down. I just tried so hard to keep it going. I ended up looking in the mirror, hating myself. I saw the scissors on the side and ended up cutting myself for every day I'd been injured, and that had been quite a few days. Now, as a female, you're wearing a crop top and you're wearing shorts, so you end up thinking amongst the black cloud and mist and wanting to jump into a hole and not see tomorrow, which is exactly what I felt. In one head, I'm still getting ready for World Champs and I've got to go out in public, so I was putting makeup over scars. And, you know, mental health is a thing that you're never, ever, you don't think about that. It just impacts your life like nothing. You know, and I was at the depths of despair, but I didn't know who to talk to. On one side of me, I was dying, and the other side, I was living for my dream to be Olympic champion. And I went to those World Championships and I got a silver medal, and no one knew what was happening.
So you were holding all of this to yourself, and by harming yourself, were you in some way trying to hurt your body for letting you down again?
You take that personally to yourself, and I think it was just a massive outlet of crying without being able to cry to someone, to look weak. I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want my opposition to know I was weak. And back then in 2003, you didn't talk about mental health. I didn't know about a breakdown, becoming a self-harmer, to being depressed. I had no idea what that meant. Didn't even know the label when I was going through it until after.
Mental health has always had a stigma, and we're fighting so hard to get over this, to say, you know, when depression hits people, it can come out the blue, but it's often to dealing with stress, and it's nothing to do with the person's inability. It's to do with the fact that they've got stresses which none of us can cope with. We still have people, when they call me in saying, can you help with this young woman? And they say she needs help because she's got a poor self-image, or she can't deal with setbacks, and this is seen as a weakness. You know, and the kind of thing I get told is, you need to get them mentally tough. And I keep trying to explain it's nothing to do with mental toughness. It's to do with the fact that we have inbuilt systems in our head that we have to learn how they operate and how to manage them.
So how did you get yourself out of that state of mind?
So I won the silver medal and I was still going through a hard time because when you have a breakdown, that's not an instant, you just get over it. That's a mental health problem. You know, I ended up being diagnosed with depression. What I realised through all of this is that if I can get through this journey, all of the injuries, all of the health problems, all of this, I know I could do what I wanted to do. It was almost like an empowering thing to me as well as a really bad time of my life. So I ended up speaking to Alison Rose, my physio. I just said, I need your help, but not psychologically. I just said, I need you to keep me injury-free because I know I can do it. And that's really why I went into that year, in 2004, thinking, I can't ever be worse than I am now. I can only get better by showing that I can do it.
Seems to me like you had this incredible inner strength and belief in what you could do, and you took it on yourself to go, I'm in a bit of a funk here.
Yeah.
I know what I want to do. I know my body can do it if my body stays healthy. You've driven that whole thing yourself, and then you get yourself to the Olympic Games, and then what?
Well, the training had been amazing. You know, like literally when we went to Tallahassee, our holding camp, I could never have asked for a better build-up to a championships. I'd never had that same build-up. It was almost like we were on a holiday camp because I just didn't let the pressure get to me. Paula Radcliffe was favourite to win a gold medal that year, and there was no expectations of me, no pressure.
As a fan, I suppose you always wondered, like, is she ever going to get this top spot? And then, of course, by the time she was at Athens, you know, she was 34 years old. And people just kind of thought, she's never going to do it. Like, she's lovely, but it's never going to happen.
I just went into those games knowing I was in the shape of my life and nothing else could put me down. And so I went there not to win the 800-metre gold medal. I mean, let's face it, you saw my eyes at the end of the line popping out my head. Never thought I'd win that.
We all remember that picture, that look of, I've done it. And almost that, well, the disbelief probably, and then you realised that it was amazing.
I went into the 800 knowing I was in the shape of my life, that I could win a medal and what it would take to win, 1 minute 56 something. And I just ran at how I thought I could win a medal.
To watch that race, to see her come from the back, but this time crossing first place was just, I mean, yeah, still goosebumps, like 16 years on.
I think the thing with Kel is obviously awesome athlete, but brilliant tactician. I mean, when you look back at those races, she judges it perfectly right. The 800 metres, you know, she keeps to the back because she knows the pace is fast and that people are going to fold, and the perfect pace judgment that she had, knowing that she could come through.
If I hadn't have won the 800, I think I would have personally put pressure on myself to win something that was a dream for 20 years. You know, since I watched Sebastian Coe win the 1500 metres, I always wanted to be a 1500-metre Olympic champion.
If I look at performance, trying to complete an 800 and a 1500-metre double is tough. I tried it on 2 occasions and buggered up on both of them. And it's not just about winning 2 races. In Kelly's case, it was winning something that she'd worked half her life to achieve, and then bouncing back a few days later to try and climb the mountain a second time.
Her performance in Athens was one of the things that made people actually think, wow, maybe they are serious, maybe they do have some athletes. And certainly that was the turning point in our bid. When we look back, we often say the turning point we're bidding was 2004 Athens, when our athletes were amazing.
I was in the warm-up area waiting to go out and compete in the 5,000 metres, and the team staff said to me, Kelly's just won the Olympics. I was like, what, the emotion and like the thrill that gave me to know that she just won the Olympic Games. It was very surreal as I warmed up to go out and do my own race, and it gave me a massive boost.
I felt in the final like I was floating. It's such a weird thing to say to people. I literally felt like something was holding me up, and I'm just going through almost like a movie. People were silhouettes, you know. The only person I knew was behind me was Ben Hassey, because she won a silver medal in the 800 metres. And then I was like, this ton of weight went off me, and I had Angel tattooed on my shoulder, because I seriously believe that, you know, when you go through journeys in life, maybe it's for a reason.
Of course, she overcame so many injuries earlier in her career, and really just getting that phase of being injury-free, she could show people what she could do. And, you know, it was nice to see her actually get the rewards of all the years she'd put in.
And I don't think I'd ever have won 2 gold medals without that journey. So I'd go for it again if it made me win 2 golds.
So double Olympic gold champion, you're 34 years old. It's taken you an incredible journey through an enormous amount of setbacks and different environments, different inputs. What difference did it make to you that a female coach who would understand better what you were going through?
Yeah, so Margot had real empathy around what I'd been through. Yet she'd also, because she was a female, she was a bit more like, right, come on, we can do this. We're going to shape what you feel. I fell in love with her so quickly because she was somebody that I felt was nurturing me a little bit more. Somebody, being a female, I could open up a bit more. I could tell her about the operations I had and told her when I was suffering physically. And I do think that is a difference between male and female. You know, Dave was a fantastic coach, you know, he really was, but there's certain things that maybe I didn't tell him.
Sometimes you don't recognise that until you are a bit older and you can look back and see what worked and see what didn't work. So if you were putting your looking back hat on now, what would you want to see in place?
Mentoring would have been good. We didn't have mentoring back there. There was no such thing. It was coaching, that was it. What I would have liked, even as a high performer, and even at the age, you know, I was 34 when I had my breakdown, let's face it, what I definitely needed was somebody that could, as we call them now, a mental health advisor or a psychologist for life, generally, not a sports psychologist. I think that that's something that has to be put in place across the board. Life's tough for people generally, and when you're in sport, you now see it as a career. But because that career isn't a given, it isn't necessarily a pathway that's going to earn you a living or you can see a future in it because you do not know. I think you have to have people that guide you to help you fundamentally with around you. And so I really hope that sport can start to realise the need to have people within the sport setup who are there just for that person. Not for a gain, not for a financial gain, not to see medals, to actually treat us like human beings.
And that's something that now you're very passionate about influencing in terms of encouraging former athletes to share their experiences with the up-and-comers or just youths, perhaps from disadvantaged backgrounds, who need that shoulder to cry on, the arm that goes round you, but who can speak to them with so much life experience.
In 2004, early 2004, I started a mentoring programme called On Camp with Kelly. What it taught me, which leads to almost what I do now, is that young females are quite vulnerable. They doubt themselves a lot. I used to have a lot of young girls that had eating problems, didn't know how to talk about the food and worries and not going out with their friends. And I was that influence because I needed and knew that I needed to be, I would have loved to have a voice. I ended up being that voice, and I ran that programme for 10 years. I think there's a lot of talent that's gone missing and will be missed if we don't have that all-round support mechanism behind people. Whether it's funding or just identity of who is needed for that person, we all need someone different in our lives. We all need different influences.
So we talked about the importance of having the right people around you at the right time. Going into an Olympics, is there anyone to prepare you for what retirement might look like?
Definitely not. There was nothing there that kind of had that setup of once you finish sport, where you go next. And, you know, people were saying to me, oh, you're going to retire now. And I was thinking, I'm going to retire. I didn't want to retire. I didn't want to finish sport. But in 2005, I got another injury. I'd obviously now been wearing high heel shoes and going to all these events and not concentrating on my body at all. You know, started to drink, I'd never drunk, you know, all of these sort of things. And yeah, it wasn't good for being an athlete. And I ended up deciding at the end of 2005 that I was going to retire just because I didn't have anything else to go for. So 6 months after that, I actually went through another bout of depression because I was questioning who I was and my identity. I really lost who I was. So now I felt a bit like a product, you know, where I was just being asked to open this, cut this. And while the opportunities were great, it felt like I wasn't guiding my career anymore. So in 2005, I got the opportunity to write my first book, which was Black, White and Gold, my autobiography. And I wanted it to be an inspirational book. So I talked in there openly about the mental health problems that I'd gone through in 2003 and 4, and no one still knew. So I was actually opening up for the first time in a public arena. I hadn't told my family, hadn't told my friends. So it was quite a hard time to think, shall I write it? And I did.
You just didn't know what to say because we didn't understand all this sports scientists. You know, they said, oh, just get over it as best you can sort of thing, you know, but we didn't understand it. So all we could do is just sort of cheer her up in the best ways we could.
I remember a comment in a newspaper saying, oh, now she's not invincible and now we don't think that she's great as she was, because she was almost saying about her vulnerability, and it made me talk further, more, because I was like, how dare you say that a mental health problem actually makes my performances less, it makes it more.
Absolutely.
So I thought, no, I'm going to start talking.
Yeah.
So that's how I started talking about my experiences, because I wanted people to know that it's okay to not be okay, it's okay to talk, and that actually there are people out there that will listen. And we're in a time now that we have to be able to be open so that we support and actually save people's lives in some circumstances. I've done some amazing things, you know. I became National School Sport Champion for 3 years under the Gordon Brown government, and after I went to him in his second day of office and asked for that role. I started my charity, Olympian Kelly Holmes Trust, helping disadvantaged young people, various deprivation. That's how I started the mentoring programme, that's how I started the charity. And I have really done a lot of things, you know. I've become a global speaker, I've started different businesses. Through being what I now hope to be, a public speaker and open up to mental health awareness, having people being able to share and feel like they're getting cared for is so important. So from a public perception, whether that's in sport or in life generally, I think me using my influence to actually say to people, you have to provide a platform as well though. You say it's okay now for us to sort of open up and say about our mental health problems, but our sport putting in place a support mechanism for us to do it so we feel comfortable to do it. And that's the same in the workplace.
And it's not like a physical injury. It's not like something you can stick a plaster on. It heals up, you take it off, and then it's absolutely fine again. It's something that's always going to be with you and that you always have to manage. And at any point, it could be triggered off by an event in your life.
Yeah, so call it like an invisible disability almost. During that process of dealing with it, understanding and accepting that you might not be in a great place will also give you an understanding of how you can cope better. And a big part of that for me was when my mum passed away in 2017, I was devastated. And as much as I've self-harmed, had depression, that will always be the worst day of my life. That was also the last day I self-harmed, because as I was cutting myself, I knew that it wasn't going to bring her back and it wasn't helping me. I wasn't going to feel better. So I learnt to control my actions around my emotions. It gave me a strength of character to know that I don't care what people think about how I look and perception that people might have of me and, you know, box that people might put me in. It's like I'm going to live my life now and be who I want to be, because she can't. Sometimes I still feel I'm not doing what I want to do. And it sounds really weird, and people saying you can actually get quite teary, because being an athlete, you've got something. You really have something in life that puts you in you. It's for you. Achieving your best is everything that you can ever do to get the best out of yourself.
You know what you're aiming for.
You know what you're aiming for. It's your skill set, because you know how to do it. I still think there's something missing. I still think I've got another gold medal to get somewhere. I've got more to give. I don't want to just have the honorary colonel, the dame, double Olympic champion, ex-military person. I want to be businesswoman of the year, she's this of the year, whatever. I still have to drive myself. And in turn, if I can motivate other people, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, Colonel Dame Kelly, you are without question a driving force. Your story's fascinating, and I love how you're continually challenging yourself to find ways to use your experiences to help other people. And it's been wonderful for me to listen to your story. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.